Morning, everyone. Pleased to join you this morning. We understand it was party night last night, so Tom and I and Staci promised no loud noises and soft voices for everybody. I'm Ryan Thompson. I'm with Miles Partnership, a senior vice president, and have the pleasure of heading our studio team at Odyssey as well. And we're pleased to join you on this panel this morning to talk about authentic storytelling, how to develop series and films that compel audiences to engage. With me is Tom Garzilli. I'll let Tom introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Is everybody able to find a seat out there? It's great to be with you, and actually, you know, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Brand USA. I'm very thankful to DI and to Miles to be here, but also just really excited to see everybody live and in person, so thanks for joining us today.
Great. And joining us virtually from Florida is Staci Mellman of Visit Florida. I'll let Staci introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Staci Mellman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Visit Florida. I've been there for about 10 years and served in a variety of roles within the organization, and I really apologize that I'm not with you in person. I really wish that I was there. I'll pretend that I am.
You're with us in spirit.
Thank you.
For sure.
Always.
So today we're going to talk for a few minutes about the work that Visit Florida and Brand USA with the Go USA platform have done to create compelling series and films. In the spirit of full disclosure, we at Miles have the pleasure of working with both of these organizations on some of these projects, and so it's a project that's near and dear to our heart, and we're excited to talk to you about it. I think specifically, though, when we were designing this panel, we wanted to talk about two very specific things, which is the quality of content and distribution, how to distribute and get eyeballs on the content that you produce. And so we will leave some time for Q&A at the end, so please prepare any questions. But I'd like to start with Tom and read something that I think was in maybe the original Go USA press release. A first of its kind connected TV network featuring best-in-class created, curated, and licensed video content to inspire, invite, and welcome travelers to visit the USA. It's the go-to channel and the definitive source to find real, authentic, and on-demand video content about travel experiences in the USA. So it was a big promise. I mean, in many ways, I think, 2017, perhaps, that was written. I mean, this was a pioneering move by Brand USA. I mean, what have you learned in these past 3 or 4 years that bring you to this point?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And actually, the story behind the storytelling is when I was thinking about this conversation, it was a little bit of a walk down memory lane, because it really starts going all the way back to when I first joined Brand USA, and my very first kind of planning meeting with my new boss, Chris Thompson, at the time. And we ended that conversation with Chris giving us the go-ahead to produce a giant screen film, our first giant screen film, and that took a while to create, and we launched that, we released that in February 2016. It became the highest grossing documentary in the world, and then 2 years later we launched America's Musical Journey, and then just in time for the pandemic we launched Into America's Wild. And that, you know, that leads to two I think, lessons and to Go USA TV. And the first one is just really about courage of your convictions and innovations, and having leadership that doesn't just say innovate, but is willing to make decisions and make it possible for that innovation to happen. Without that, you can't have any kind of new thinking. In making Into America's Wild, National Parks Adventure, I was thinking about the movie Jaws, when Roy Scheider first sees the shark and he turns and says, "We need a bigger boat." As soon as we started filming that movie, it became so obvious that the restrictions of time, storytelling, and so on, and the vastness of our storytelling challenge of all of the USA, 50 states, 5 territories, hundreds, thousands of places. There is no single piece of content you can create to tell those stories. And so how do we We knew by the time we came out with that first film, we had to have a storytelling device that could, engage everybody in the country. And so we started with One Big Welcome and Ask a Local, which has, really grown into United Stories today. Once you started to have hours of content, you could see the opportunity to create a place where all that could be. And that combined with the huge move a couple of years ago of consumers into streaming television and all of these new devices and different ways of consuming just led us to seeing that opportunity and taking the opportunity. And so that second lesson was just, you have to be ready to find solutions for your, for the scale of your audience. And I think Staci, in her world does the same thing. I mean, Florida's got a huge number of stakeholders. It's not just about the state. So anyway, that's kind of the beginnings of Go USA TV.
Interesting. So the bigger boat, the bigger ship was Go USA. You mentioned the giant screen films, which I guess have a double life as both theatrical feature and then also streaming content. I think in the trailer, as we all entered today, we saw Trails and Trailblazers. I think we saw California Pop and Americanos. I mean, when you talk about all of these different kinds of content, what format works best? What length works best? How do you plan for screen size and those kinds of things?
So, in the end, the format is the delivery mechanism, right? I mean, business envelope, manila envelope, big box, right? It's not so much that, it's what's inside. So it's about how do you create a great story? Sometimes it can be done short, sometimes it needs to be longer, and then using the right, the right format to deliver that story. So it's a little chicken egg thing, right? You absolutely want to create the right piece of content for the right device, the right screen, for the right audience. But it also goes the other way. You have to, kind of create a great piece of content first. And I always lean and I always end up in the same place of saying, what's most important is that whatever you create is authentic and, that will inspire people to watch it and to act on it. And so then figuring out the best way to deliver it is important. But you got to have great content first.
That's great. So, Staci, you took a different approach with Visit Florida, as Visit Florida often does, and went with a scripted series, so fictional with cast talent. We just released it together called Life's Rewards on Amazon Prime. How did you make that decision? I mean, it's a very different kind of content. It's one that follows a more comedy or drama approach. How did we arrive there?
Yeah, I think we called it a dramedy. We came up with a variety of very unique concepts across different formats. And, we wanted to have several concepts in the bag that were destination agnostic, because to Tom's point, we have a variety of stakeholders, and we see this original programming and content storytelling as the next wave of opportunity for marketers within our state. And Visit Florida really strives to be tip of the spear and sees our role as a destination marketing organization on behalf of our state partners to take some initial risks and support them in their efforts. And when we can create great things together, then great things happen for the state of Florida. So we came up with a variety of concepts. Some were docuseries style, some were reality TV based, some were scripted series. And full confession, this was my personal preference to start with. I thought that this scripted story would be the most compelling and a great way to keep an audience engaged. I felt like it was different than some of the content development stuff that we had already been doing for a while at Visit Florida. And so and it was a great way to kind of have an audience return. and keep coming back for that story. It wasn't just about 30 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever it is. It was about we essentially created a feature film in this season 1. And I was really hoping to turn this idea into a show, but actually the decision was made pretty pragmatically to get to the Life's Rewards option. So compared to the other concepts, this scripted series gave us the greatest opportunity for control, which was pretty critical because we were filming during the pandemic. And it was also a concept that we were able to get our partner, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, excited enough to engage with us on this initiative and to be a brave partner in this. And I should say that we did create all of these concepts destination agnostic. So when we found the right partner to collaborate with, that we could fill in the destination approach.
That's great. A follow-on to that is, scripted is a very complex form of entertainment. You're dealing with cast talent, you're dealing with the script, and frankly, I think if we were to go around the room and talk about the scripted series we love and don't love, we're all going to differ. The things we could probably get in an argument about the things I love versus don't. So I guess that creates a risk, right? Some are going to love it, some are not. How did you arrive at the decision that this idea was right for the audience?
Well, to your point, I think we all have that experience in our own households. Like, I won't watch some of the stuff that my husband watches. But I think it's about finding the right audience and not trying to be everything to everyone. That's the most important part, is know who your audience is. We wanted to create something that was an engaging story, that was accessible for people, that they would want to continue to watch. And there's a market for that. We all binge stuff on TV, and in fact, like the pandemic just accelerated that behavior.
Great. So, I think what I'm hearing from both of you is something we've all talked about together is, it's story first, story matters, quality of content first. Let's switch gears though and talk about distribution. Tom, GoUSA started as a downloadable app for mobile devices and connected TVs. And so we're talking Roku, Fire, Apple, iOS, Android. But recently, you forged new partnerships with Samsung in the United Kingdom, with Plex, which is a very popular connected TV platform, in Europe and India with Samsung as well. But specifically, Samsung and Plex follow a more linear programming format, meaning there are shows at 8, 9, 10 o'clock. How's the strategy evolved that lets you reach this point? How are you choosing new distribution partners? What matters in this process?
Yeah, and this landscape is changing in real time. But you have companies like Samsung, and just for those of you who maybe are less aware of this, but if you buy a Samsung TV today, it comes loaded with content, and it's a really smart idea, right? Because they're trying to compete with the Netflix and all of the new roll-ups. And they realize, look, we're putting the hardware into people's houses, so why aren't we just use that? And then you have Fast TV, this free advertising sustained television, which is really linear television, but it's just allowing you to search. It allows you to save. It's a little bit closer to the on-demand concept. So long story short, I guess. We're just always looking for any opportunity to get the content we are, producing, curating, and licensing content. So it's not just our own original content, as you know. We're getting great content from our partners. Some of the best content on the channel is just content that comes to us from you. And then we also license some of our partners like Discovery TV licenses their content to us, and some others. So you have this combination of content. You just want to get that out in as many places as possible. It is having this breadth of content and the amount. You have to have more than 100 hours of content to be able to get on these channels. You have to change it up on a regular basis. So, we were able to kind of reach up and get into that world. And these companies are all looking for really good, different, engaging content. And we have yet to, the next stage for us, when we get through kind of these next months on the pandemic and our, some of our funding challenges, is to really invest in building the audience on these channels, which is really important too, because let's face it, our content is on, Amazon and Roku and these places, Netflix. You've got to spend the money to promote, to get people to pull in, to watch your content. So it's getting the content built. It's then finding ways to distribute it. And then when you know what you got, you can start investing in really building an audience.
So, in the absence, I think we all know that the Travel Channel essentially pivoted several years ago to become the Paranormal Channel, right. Not in name, but essentially in content. So in the absence of that, Go USA started as, we can call it an app, but it's really a channel available on multiple devices. I think part of our discussions that led us into Samsung and Plex are the reach into international audiences, which are some of our key markets for Brand USA, and it's opened the opportunity for viewership. And I think an important thing we haven't necessarily talked about is we're also expanding into environments that people have already adopted. So they already have their Samsung TV, they already may be a Plex subscriber, so we are in more places that people want us to be to see the content.
Very much so, and of course, and Staci alluded to this, right? This was happening, and crises like the current crisis, it accelerates change, whatever that change is. The change of consumer behavior around consumption of content, just accelerated so tremendously, and all of these channels, all of these devices, people were just looking for things to watch. We want to be in front of them with really good, again, authentic, compelling content. We're authentic about what you're going to get when you get that content. And I think that just is an important component too. People don't want to be advertised to, and being authentic in your storytelling is important, but also authentic in being relevant, so that I know I'm about to watch a great foodie show about Norfolk, Virginia, and I'm watching that show and I'm getting what I'm watching. And they don't want to feel like they're watching a show and they're getting a commercial, and so just making sure you're not crossing that line, and being in destination marketing is a great place to be for this kind of tool, because the place is the story.
Right.
You don't have to do much more than that. Everyone in the audience, all of you who represent destinations, love your destinations, and there are things about your places that you love, and that's what you want to express to an audience, and you just have to do it in a really genuine way, and people want to consume that. They're interested in that, and ultimately they're inspired. Ultimately, they'll go as a result. So,
we talked yesterday in a session about, the destination is essentially a key character in the story. To borrow from literature, we're the mentor or the guide in the story that takes our hero or our consumer through this journey. So I think that's really interesting. Staci, your Come Out series, Life's Rewards, is also on a variety of platforms, but I think most notably it's on Prime Video, which makes it free to Prime subscribers, but also available for purchase through a transaction. How was, as I scroll back through my notes, how did that relationship start? Let's talk about the experience so far and the performance so far. I know we worked together to sort of commission content into the Amazon ecosystem where they accepted Life's Rewards, but what's been the experience? What's been the performance so far?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I just want to add something to what Tom just said, because I think that it's really important for the audience to think about. You know, obviously consumer behavior is changing. It's changed a lot because of the pandemic. And I would say two things. One is both content consumption increased as a behavior, as did convenience. And I think when you think about distribution, you want to make sure that you are on the platforms that your audience is already on, right? Don't create a new platform. And I think that was the attraction of Amazon Prime. Back in 2018, most people only were streaming from Netflix. But by December 2020, people were subscribing to at least 4 different streaming channels, which gave us a lot of opportunity to choose where we wanted to be. And so, I think Prime was a great opportunity for us, and gave us access as all, in addition to, it gave us an opportunity to have a branded connection to a very, very well-known platform that then, further justifies the kind of content that we have as quality. So I think that was like the benefit in my eyes of working with, and being distributed through Amazon Prime. But in terms of the performance piece and kind of where we are right now, it's a relatively new marketing tactic. So there is no standardization for evaluation method that exists to measure the return on investment for branded content for longer form video. And, we ran into the situation where it's not like Netflix or Amazon Prime are sharing the performance of their content. They don't have kind of an open dashboard of how content and viewership is performing. And brands who have done this kind of original programming don't share their metrics either. And we did a deep dive into research to see where the benchmarks could be, how we set KPIs and success metrics. And we really just had to create it on our own. And our goal, at least for the initial approach, was to just establish a benchmark and kind of draw a line in the sand to measure going forward. And it was, our approach was very much a logically driven approach. We created, advertising value equivalencies. Because of this new format, we wanted to really create a side-by-side marketing comparison for tactics that, are very typical in our marketing mix. So specifically looking at comparing cost, engagement, completed viewership, unique viewers, those kinds of things. So we could see when we invest in this approach, how does it compare to when we're doing a typical, 30, 60 ad or stuff on YouTube. So we are about 6 weeks post-launch. We launched May 1st, 10 weeks? But I don't know, I feel like I'm in pandemic brain still. We launched May 1st at the film festival in St. Pete, Clearwater, and then I think May 10th on Prime. So, we're about pacing 40% of at our 6-month goal, and we're about 8 weeks into the process.
That's great. So I want to ask both of you, and Staci, let's start with you. What considerations should we be thinking about with the wide variety of screen sizes? I mean, is it like a hard and fast rule that longer form, larger screen, or is there some other way to look at that?
Well, personally, I watch most of my content on my iPad, and I listen to the radio on my phone. So I feel like it's really important to be, device agnostic or just device universal. People want to watch what they want to watch on the device that they want to watch, and I think that it's hard for us to, I think it's limiting. It would be limiting to just say one screen on another. Now, I've seen Life's Rewards at a movie theater, and I thought it was a fantastic experience. And I've also seen it on my laptop, and I think both experiences were great. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it on Amazon Prime. I'll just plug it right there. Leave us a review. But I think it's fundamentally about the story, and I wouldn't worry too much about screen size. I would just focus on having a great story to tell. And I think to the point that Tom said earlier, travel is about stories, our individual experiences in those places and how those places shape that experience. And there's just so much opportunity as destination marketers for us to share those interesting stories with people. And now we have this new and highly accessible, very engaging format to do that in.
Yeah, it's interesting. My 11-year-old will choose to watch all of his little series on his phone while a 60-inch TV is right behind him. So,
I'll just agree with what Staci's saying, because even again, as we've evolved, as we started this, we had our multi-screen, many voices strategy. We said from mobile to giant screen, and everything in between. We were creating the right content for the right screen, and we still think of it that way. But the reality is, people are going to watch how they want to watch, and we don't want to, limit them. So we're our film, which I will say is best seen on an IMAX screen, I've watched on my phone, and it's a great experience. It's not the same, but I would venture to guess, as we start to measure now that the films and now that some of the long form shows are on mobile and things, that we're getting just as much consumption, because many more people are watching their phones and when they're commuting or whatever, and so you got to be everywhere.
That's great.
And sorry, one more thing about this. Big picture companies are doing this too, and they're having dual series launches in theaters and on their streaming devices.
Yeah.
So, I think that's important to know too. It's not just like, we don't have, we want to get as much eyeballs on it as possible. Yes, of course, but they do too. And I think that that behavior is changing, where I can watch Raya on Disney Plus the day that it launches on my couch or on my iPad, and I can also go to the theater and do it too.
Absolutely. So I want to ask, what's next for both of your organizations? We're going to leave some time for Q&A, but Tom, let's start with you. As we look at Go USA, what's next?
Well, again, we're putting aside kind of where we are in this moment as we get back into normal. We're at that stage with the channel that we want to now start really looking at how to get out there and build an audience for each of the distribution networks that we've generated, continue to create content, continue to engage with our partners to get them to either be bringing their content to us or helping them to create content, but to continue to use these channels to inspire people and telling the stories of the USA, which is ultimately where we began this conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Staci, what's next?
Well, I think for us, we're currently in conversations about a season 2 for Life's Rewards. It ended on a cliffhanger, and we've been getting a lot of requests to continue to tell that story. And then, as I started this conversation, we created a handful of ideas. And so I would really like to see, I think those ideas are equally as great, and I'd like to see them come to fruition and have those stories to tell on behalf of the state.
That's great. So before we go to Q&A, I want to give each of you some time to share parting thoughts. And so, Staci, let's start with you. What guidance would you give our audience before we answer some questions?
Sure. I have so much. So if you get started on this and you really want to have a phone call, happy to have that with you. I would say, a few things. First of all, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but content development is very different than content storytelling. Destinations are really, really great at creating content about their destination that's educational and informative. What I hope to see is more original and engaging storytelling from destinations, because that kind of storytelling is much less transactional and creates a reason for that audience to return. I would say that if you do to consider this part of your marketing mix in the future, I want to, we talked a little bit about this, but I want to stress the importance of developing a very strong story first, and then figuring out how your destination weaves into that. We talked a little bit about distribution, so don't forget to plan for distribution and attracting the audience that you want, because you can develop a great story and it can be filmed beautifully, but if no one sees it, it misses the mark. And so I would almost put the storytelling and the distribution on equal footing. And the final piece, and as with every project that you do, it's really about having the right team at the table. I think something that we learned was, just the importance of selecting the right people to be the storytellers, the directors, the talent, the crew, because this is something that probably you would be doing for the first time. You want to make sure that you're confident in the process and the decisions that you're making, that you have the right people doing it, because that's just going to be a lot more comforting throughout the development process for you.
That's great. Thanks, Staci. Tom?
Yeah, and I'll start with something Staci touched on, because I couldn't agree more. Important to create great content, but you have to be able to distribute it. So, you need to look at that when you're looking at a budget of don't create content that you can't distribute. And I'd add to that, own your content. And, so traditional agencies, I'm not trying to be too critical, but, they will come and develop a really great, beautiful content. You love it, it's expensive, you spend the money. A year later, 2 years later, the license runs out, you can't use it anymore, or it's so expensive to renew. You don't have to do that anymore. You can create great content, you own it outright, and it will last. There is content, again, on the channel that things like, America Through Film, where we have Spike Lee's New York, that content's probably 5 years old. If you watch it today, it's as fresh as ever. So when you create good or authentic content, it lasts. Own it. So there's that point, and I agree with Staci on that. And then the second part of how important it is to just be authentic in your storytelling, and it will last, and you'll be able to use it. And then basically, what I would invite everyone to do is, when you get a chance, maybe before you leave this room, download the Go USA TV app on your smartphones. Look at the content. Look at how we're doing it. This is not a pay-to-play channel. We're not selling a channel. This is your channel. So I'd love nothing more than for you to look at this content and say to yourselves, I have stuff that's just as good, or I can create stuff that's just as good, and then let us distribute it or help distribute it. If you have content, you can send it to us at tv@thebrandUSA.com, and we have a process that we go through to look at it, and we'll give you some input and either put it on the channel or help you get it to where it could be on the channel. So I would just say that I thank you all for listening.
That's great. Looks like we have 5 or 6 minutes for questions from the audience. So can we bring the house lights up just a bit so we could see on stage? And I think there's a hand right over here.
Shelby Sims, Santinas Valley, Santa Barbara County, California. It's a question for Staci. Staci, I've also got a show, Visit SYB also has a show on Amazon Prime, but ours was free, and now they're charging 99 cents. I was wondering how yours is still free, and how come ours is being charged?
So Staci, I'm not sure if you can hear the audience questions without a microphone. But the gentleman asked, essentially, he also has a show on Amazon Prime, and it was free, but now they're charging for it. How is our show also free still? And I can probably answer that since we've helped manage that relationship. I mean, if you control your content, if you submitted and had a relationship with Amazon, you should be able to set your pricing model. There are built-in pricing models, which sounds like one of those might have kicked in, but you can also set whether it is free for Prime subscribers or paid. So there is a dashboard where you could do that, and I suspect it's probably in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome. I happen to know that answer, so.
Hold on, I have a mic.
Oh, hold on, we're going to do a microphone real quick so Staci can hear as well. There we are.
Morning. I'm real familiar, Tom, with what you do with Brand USA and think that's just awesome. I'm curious about the Visit Florida model because creating great content, filming it, paying for all of that can be crazy expensive. So I'm kind of curious about share of budget for Visit Florida for that kind of initiative. Does that make sense? Percentage of budget?
Sure. So we have a content budget, and it goes into a variety of different pools. One thing that we do is we create content partnerships with major publishers. We have our own, obviously, content development process for our website and our YouTube channels, and we just carved out a piece of that for these kinds of projects. In terms of share of budget, I don't know approximately how much that covers. I would say probably it's, I don't know, maybe about 10% of our marketing budget. But I would also say that for Life's Rewards, we did a equal co-investment with Visit St. Pete Clearwater for the production piece of it, which both decreased the risk for both of our DMOs for the production cost. It was a shared investment, which I think is obviously great it's a win-win.
Great. A couple more minutes. Any other questions?
There's one.
I think we've got one
Yeah, I
over.
think there's one over there. Rory's.
There we are. We're going to make Rory run
Rory's
across the
getting
room
her
each
steps
time.
I was curious about production costs as compared to distribution cost. Is it equal? Is one higher than the other?
That's a great.
That's a
It's a complex question.
It's a complex question. Yes, thank you. You can't. There really isn't a formula, right? You'd have to look at what is it that you're creating, and for what device or what distribution, and then kind of just determine over a period of time how much you're spending on buying audience, or we have everything from when we're doing our film. You're talking about, and of course our mission is international, so it's all about, doing events and doing things around that kind of distribution. And that's not the same as kind of taking a short piece of content and pushing it out on, social media, things like that. The costs of that, and you just have to budget for it. You have to, you just have to kind of do that calculation.
Yeah.
And I would also add that it's about the format, right? Like what we saw during the pandemic is Apple was pulling together beautiful commercials that were shot on an iPhone, and that's not going to be as costly as shooting on a Red. So it's a different kind of experience, and it's all about what the visual style of your production piece is. But I would say that you do have to budget a certain amount for the distribution that you want. And, we had for Life's Rewards, we had a multi-distribution approach. Not only was it a paid media distribution, but we ran a national promotion with Cape Craddock radio show talking about the series. We had PR efforts. So I think it's about thinking through the distribution ecosystem and not just on a pay-to-play approach. But you got to plan for that within your budget.
And just to make one other point, when you look at all of this, you start to feel like, oh, it's so expensive. And you can spend millions of dollars producing content, but you don't have to. If you have a story, again, I just keep coming back to the passion that you all feel for your places. You can use, your iPhone today is an amazing device. I mean, I'm not suggesting all production should be done on an iPhone, but you can be creative if you are, you have to watch your budget. You could be creative about how you go about doing it. It's not always the production value. It's the story, it's the place, it's the person telling the story, it's how you do it. We have on our channel, I assure you there's tremendous high, budget stuff. There's also just really efficiently shot, great, compelling stuff that we're, that is just as good. You just have to find the right story and make it work for your budget.
Yeah, well, and to that point, I mean, I think we start each project absolutely with a distribution budget, but we've said, I think the theme is, the world is looking for great content. That means journalism, social media, et cetera, is also looking for great content. So I don't want to make it sound easy, but if you do tell a unique, compelling story, and it could be one of these angles that Tom's talking about, the way it was shot, the character in it, the story itself, there's also a higher chance of pickup for earned media and things like that. That could lower what would be traditionally an advertising-only approach for this. And so, but I think it's important to have a budget and to create an omni-channel approach like Staci talked about, where if earned media does pick up, perhaps you could lower the advertising investment, but it's all got to work together at the end of the day.
I just also would add, as you're talking about that, when we think about many voices, which is part of that strategy, it's about influencers, category experts, locals, artists, celebrities, any of those things. And again, you all have in your places people who fit those categories, just wonderful local, interesting people who can tell a story. It doesn't have to be always, someone who's got a following, that's an influencer that costs money to bring, in and do, or a scripted, series of things like that. I mean, those are all great things too, but you can really start with just a very organic, authentic story done in a very simple way. Push it out and see what happens.
I think that's a great place to end. So thank you, everyone. Staci, thanks for joining us from Florida. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Bye, Staci.
Bye. Enjoy.
Thank you.